Found your little savings, my sister Brittany taunted, waving a stack of bearer bonds in my face like a fan. The crisp paper rustled in the stale air of my parents' dining room. Thanks for the college fund, Anna. Fashion school isn't cheap. My parents beamed proudly, clinking their wine glasses as if they were toasting a promotion, not a felony. Finally, my mom sighed, taking a long sip of Chardonnay. You're being useful to this family. They didn't know the bonds weren't savings. They didn't know I wasn't just an accountant. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I tapped my phone screen once. 3 seconds later, the front door didn't just open, it exploded inward. Treasury agents burst through the door, weapons drawn, turning their celebration into a crime scene. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community of silent warriors. 30 minutes before the raid, I was sitting in my car 2 blocks away, watching the digital tracker on my phone pulse. My name is Anna, and I'm 29 years old. To the people inside that house, I was just a corporate accountant, a boring, reliable spreadsheet jockey who existed solely to fix their tax problems and fund their emergencies. They didn't know I spent my days hunting assets for the Treasury Department. They didn't know I specialized in forensic audits of criminal enterprises. They just knew I had money, and they felt entitled to it. For years, I had been the silent investor in the bankruptcy that was my family. I paid for the cars my sister Brittany crashed. I funded the influencer trips to Dubai that yielded 0 followers but thousands in credit card debt. I covered the mortgage when my father, Robert, made bad investments. I was their safety net, their retirement plan, their invisible ATM. I used to think if I gave enough, they would finally see me. I thought if I solved enough problems, I would earn my seat at the table. But that night, as I stared at the tracker, indicating my bearer bonds were sitting on my parents' dining table, the illusion finally shattered. I realized I had fallen into the trap of normalized cruelty. It's a psychological mechanism where abnormal behavior becomes the baseline. In my parents' twisted reality, taking from me wasn't theft. It was harvesting. They looked at my bank account the way a farmer looks at a crop field. It didn't belong to the crop. It belonged to the farmer. They had normalized the idea that my existence was justified only by my utility to Brittany. I wasn't a person with rights or property. I was a resource. And you don't ask a resource for permission. You just take what you need. That's why they didn't hesitate to give Brittany the code to my home safe. I had trusted them with that emergency key years ago. A foolish act of love. They used it to let their golden child raid my sanctuary while I was at work. They didn't see it as a betrayal. They saw it as efficient parenting. Why let Brittany struggle when Anna has resources she doesn't even use? They thought they were helping. They thought they were the good guys, redistributing wealth from the boring sister to the one with potential. I watched the house lights flicker through the trees. They were in there right now, likely popping champagne, celebrating the windfall. They thought they had secured Brittany's tuition for fashion school. They laughed at me then, thinking I was the fool who worked hard just to fund their dreams. But they didn't know that laughter was sealing their financial doom. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was clinical. I checked my holster, smoothed my blazer, and signaled the tactical team leader on the encrypted channel. Asset confirmed on site. Proceed on my mark. I wasn't walking in there as a daughter. I was walking in as an auditor. And tonight, the audit was due. I stepped into the dining room, and the air smelled like expensive roast beef and betrayal. The visual contrast was jarring. My family was bathed in the warm glow of the chandelier, their faces flushed with the excitement of a successful heist, while I stood in the doorway, bringing the cold reality of the night in with me. Brittany was still holding the stack of bonds, flipping through them carelessly with greasy fingers. She treated $250,000 like it was a stack of coupons she'd found in the mail. God, Anna, these look so boring, she scoffed, tossing the bundle onto the table next to the gravy boat. I thought you'd have, like, gold bars or stacks of cash. This looks like homework. She didn't understand what she was holding. To her, value was only real if it sparkled. She couldn't see the federal serial numbers or the tracking watermarks. She just saw a tuition check that needed cashing. My mother, Deborah, didn't waste time on pleasantries. She didn't ask how I was, or why I was standing there in my work blazer at 8 o'clock on a Friday. She was a woman on a mission, and that mission was legitimizing the theft. She reached into her purse and pulled out a piece of paper and a pen, sliding them across the mahogany table toward me. The sound of the paper scratching against the wood was the only noise in the room. It's just a gift letter, sweetie, she said, her voice dripping with that fake, sugary tone she used when she wanted to manipulate me. The admissions office at the design school needs proof that the funds are legitimate. Just sign here, stating that you're gifting this to your sister, and we can all have cake. I looked at the cheap plastic pen. It was a symbol of my entire life in this house. They didn't just want my assets. They wanted my consent. They wanted me to sign away my agency, to validate their robbery so they could sleep at night feeling like good parents. They wanted me to be an accomplice in my own exploitation. My father, Robert, leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance, as if my hesitation was a character flaw. "Don't look so sour, Anna," he lectured, his voice booming with unearned authority. "It's family money. It doesn't matter whose name is on the account. We all pitch in. You weren't using it anyway." "I wasn't using it?" I repeated, my voice flat. "You have your little corporate job. You have a 401k, he said dismissively. "Brittany needs a launch pad. She has dreams, Anna. You have stability. It's selfish to hoard resources you don't need when your sister is trying to build a future. We basically did you a favor. We gave your money a purpose." There it was. The gaslighting was absolute. In their narrative, they were the heroes rescuing stagnant capital from the miserly sister to fund the artist. They truly believed they had the moral high ground. They weren't thieves. They were allocators. I looked at their expectant faces, waiting for me to pick up the pen and play my role. They thought I was silent because I was beaten. They thought I was calculating the loss, but I wasn't calculating anything. I was just waiting for the breach team to hit the perimeter. They laughed at my silence, mistaking my restraint for weakness. Unaware that the countdown in my head had just reached 0, I didn't reach for the pen. Instead, I reached for the glass of water in front of me, and took a slow, deliberate sip. The ice clinked against the glass, a sharp sound that cut through their expectant murmurs. I set the glass down and looked at my mother, then my father, and finally my sister. The silence stretched, transforming from awkward to heavy. "You think I stare at spreadsheets all day, don't you?" I asked, my voice calm, almost conversational. "You think I sit in a cubicle in a gray office park, reconciling expense reports and fixing printer jams?" My mother sighed, clearly annoyed that I wasn't signing the paper. "Anna, please don't be dramatic. We know what you do. You're an accountant. It's very stable. We're proud of you in our own way. Now sign the letter." "I'm not an accountant," I said. "And I don't work for a corporation." Brittany rolled her eyes. "Oh my God. Did you get fired? Is that why you're hoarding cash?" "Typical. I work for the Treasury Department," I corrected her. "Specifically, the Office of Foreign Assets Control. I'm a forensic auditor. I don't stare at spreadsheets, Mom. I stare at federal crimes. And you're holding one right now." The room went quiet. Not the expectant quiet of before, but a confused, stuttering silence. My father chuckled nervously. "What are you talking about? You've always said you work in finance." I said I work in financial analysis. "You never asked for details because you found my life boring. You assumed the rest." I pointed at the stack of bonds in Brittany's hand. "Those aren't savings bonds. They are bearer bonds seized from a shell company used by the Sinaloa cartel to launder drug money. I was auditing them as part of an active federal investigation. I brought them home to a secure safe because my office was being fumigated over the weekend. They are evidence. Federal evidence." I leaned forward, locking eyes with Brittany. "By taking them out of that safe, you didn't just steal my money. You removed classified evidence from a secure location. That's obstruction of justice. It's grand larceny. And since the value is over $100,000, it's a federal felony with a mandatory minimum sentence." I held out my hand. "Give them to me. Now. And maybe, just maybe, I can explain this as a containment breach before the tactical team hits the door." They stared at me. For a second, I thought they might actually listen. I thought the sheer weight of the words cartel and federal felony might pierce their bubble of entitlement. But then, my father laughed. It was a loud, booming sound of dismissal. "Nice try, Anna," he scoffed, shaking his head. "Really. Very creative. Trying to scare your sister with some spy novel nonsense, so you don't have to share? That's low. Even for you. Cartel money. Please, you're trying to hoard it. Just admit it." "She's jealous," Brittany chimed in, her confidence returning as she clutched the bonds tighter to her chest. "She made up a whole story because she can't stand seeing me happy. You're pathetic, Anna. Just pathetic." They were laughing. They were actually laughing. They were holding a radioactive isotope of legal destruction, and they thought it was a bluff. They thought the federal government was a plot device I invented to save a few dollars. I looked at their smug, smiling faces, and I felt the last tether of familial obligation snap. I checked my watch. "Okay," I said softly. "I tried." Brittany sneered, looking down at the stack of papers in her hand as if I had just told her they were cursed. "You are such a liar," she spat. "Federal evidence? Seriously? This looks like paper. Anna, it feels like paper. If this was some big secret cartel money, why isn't it in a briefcase handcuffed to a guy in sunglasses? She made a show of grabbing the top bond and holding it up to the light, squinting at it mockingly. Look, Mom. No invisible ink. No watermarks. Just paper. She ripped the corner off the bond, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the tense room. See? It rips like paper, too. I flinched. Not out of fear, but out of professional horror. Stop, I said, my voice cutting through her performance. That bond has an RFID microthread woven into the fiber. It's digitally tagged. By tearing it, you didn't just destroy government property. You triggered a silent tamper alarm. Brittany froze, her hand hovering over the rest of the stack. The torn corner fluttered to the table. You don't get it, I continued, my voice steady and cold. These aren't just assets. They are a homing beacon. When you took them out of my Faraday-shielded safe and brought them here, you broadcasted a signal directly to the Treasury Department's tracking grid. And now that you've damaged one, the system registers it as an active attempt to destroy evidence. I looked at my parents. Their smiles were faltering, replaced by a creeping unease. Tampering with federal evidence carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years, I said. Possession of stolen government property over $100,000? That's another 10. And since you two gave her the safe code, that makes you co-conspirators. Conspiracy to commit money laundering. Conspiracy to obstruct justice. You're bluffing, my father blustered, though his face had paled significantly. You're just trying to scare us so we give the money back. It's a trick. Is it? I asked. Look at the serial number on that bond, Brittany. Read the first 4 digits. Brittany looked down, her hands trembling now. USTD, she read, her voice barely a whisper. United States Treasury Department. I finished. With a seizure code. Those bonds are radioactive, Brittany. You're holding a felony. The only reason the door isn't down yet is because a tactical team is confirming the signal lock. I didn't know, she stammered, staring at the bonds like they were burning her. Mom said it was fine. Dad said it was family money. Ignorance isn't a defense, I said flatly. Neither is entitlement. She panicked, clutching the bonds and scanning the room. I have to get rid of them. If I burn them. Don't, I snapped. Destroying them upgrades the charge to destruction of federal records. 20 years. Put them down. Step away. It's your only chance. She froze. The silence was suffocating. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was the end. I checked my watch. Time's up. The front door exploded inward. Tactical lights flooded the room. Federal agents, get down. Hands where we can see them. Black-clad officers swarmed the dining room, rifles cutting violently against white linens and crystal glassware. Brittany screamed and tried to run. She made it 2 steps before an officer drove her into the rug. Zip ties snapping tight around her wrists as she sobbed for her parents who could do nothing. My father stood, blustering. This is a private residence. An agent shoved him back into his chair. Sit down. Hands on the table. For the first time, he looked small. My mother clawed at the officers. That's my daughter, tell them who we are. Step back or you'll be detained, an agent warned. Then they all looked at me. I stood still, calm, detached. The lead agent met my eyes. Is this the target? That is the target, I said. Suspect is in possession of stolen assets. Secure the evidence. That broke them. My mother collapsed. My father buried his face in his hands. Brittany wailed as agents dragged her toward the shattered doorway, screaming not for a lawyer but for Mommy. I turned to leave. My mother blocked the exit, wild-eyed. Fix this. Tell them it was a prank. Tell them we gave it to her. It was still a command. She still believed she owned me. Move, I said quietly. She raised her hand to strike me. I caught her wrist mid-air. For the first time in my life. She was powerless. You have no power here, I said, releasing her. And you never will again. I walked out into the night. The aftermath was clinical. Brittany took a plea deal 48 months in federal prison. My parents were indicted, lost everything, and now wait for sentencing, blaming me to anyone who will listen. I never visited. I never wrote. I emptied the account labeled Emergency Family Fund, years of savings meant to save them, and moved every dollar into my future. Then I deleted the family profile. Account removed. It cost me a sister, a mother, a father, and the illusion of love. But I bought my freedom. And the receipt was paid in full.